Hello everyone and welcome to another video. How's everyone doing? How's your weekend going? In today's video, we're playing a pretty decent game. But before we dive in, let me tell you about my struggle. I've been stuck in a loss streak for the past 10 days, bouncing between Emerald and Diamond. I've reached Diamond twice, only to get demoted twice, then dropped another 2 tiers, and now I'm back in Emerald 1. Honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if I got demoted to Emerald 2 before getting back to Diamond again this weekend. It's been a weird experience. I've had games with AFKs, levers, and even intentional feeders. But hey, this is a journey, not a sprint. I'm still working on my consistency, which is why today I'm bringing you a summary of my recent games. Specifically, I want to talk about Frozen Heart as a first item. Trust me, it's surprisingly effective, even against mage compositions. Let me explain why. So far, I haven't found a solid item that counters heavy AP teams. The only other options are building more damage or AP yourself. But Frozen Heart is a hidden gem. Here's why. Once you complete it, you mess up the enemy's tempo, especially when it comes to their auto attacks. Imagine this. Every level you gain, you get basic stats like health, mana, and attack speed. As the game progresses, you start getting used to a certain rhythm with your spells and auto attacks. Now picture someone coming along and reducing your attack speed just by being near you. It's like trying to talk while someone keeps interrupting you. You'd find it hard to finish a sentence, right? That's exactly what happens to your spell rotations and click and move spacing. You start feeling like a noob in the mid-game. The best part about Frozen Heart? It screws with mages and supports more than it does with AD carries. Of course, AD carries still feel the pain since they rely so heavily on auto attacks. But I've noticed mages struggle more to catch up, because they often weave auto attacks into their spell rotations. Take Syndra, for example. She'll dump her entire combo and then start auto attacking. But with Frozen Heart, her attack speed is so reduced, it's like she's trying to dodge while walking toward you. It's tilting because her timing feels completely off. On top of that, Frozen Heart gives a ton of armor and mana, which is huge for Volibear. I've noticed that in extended fights, after 2 or 3 rotations of my spells, I'm often left with little to no mana. Frozen Heart helps prevent that, so you're not stuck in fights just auto-attacking like an idiot. Now, Frozen Heart isn't exactly meta on Volibear or even on many junglers in general. It's more of a top laner item, but I found that it synergizes really well with my playstyle. In this specific game, we're up against Nocturne and Set, both of whom are heavy auto-attack users. Set in particular benefits from the enemy having a lot of health, so he can burst down backliners. Then there's the Lucian-Nami bot lane combo, which in my opinion is one of the hardest bot lanes to gank alongside Janna and Vayne. Here's another thing most people don't realize about Frozen Heart. It has this hidden effect called Rock Solid. It reduces damage from auto attacks based on your max health. So even if you're against casters, the attack speed reduction impacts every champion in the game. The armor, cooldown reduction, and mana it gives Volibear is invaluable, and it's an insanely cost-efficient item. Its gold efficiency is above 100%. I think somewhere around 114%. All things considered, if you're up against a team that relies on auto attacks, they're going to feel the impact of this item hard. Based on my past 20 games, I truly believe that rushing Frozen Heart as your first item on Volibear, followed by Merc Treads, is the best start in the jungle for the rest of this season. Now that we've explained why you should take Frozen Heart as your first item in the jungle on Volibear, let's dive into how you should actually play him with this item. For the past few weeks, I've been following the regular skill path found on most stat websites. Maxing Q, then W, then E. That's been the standard after the recent patches and balance changes. But honestly, this skill set doesn't work well with my playstyle. Here's why. In the current meta, you get punished hard for being the first to engage. When you play aggressively, everyone still has their summoner spells up, and that makes early ganks risky. The chances of getting a second Q off during a gank are slim. I found it much better to max W first. It provides way more damage and sustain, unlike maxing Q. Additionally, I've noticed something strange but effective. If I wait for the enemy to engage first, I perform much better. If I engage head-on, I take all the heat and get smacked around. Maxing W first allows me to absorb the enemy's damage, and then retaliate with heavier hits. It makes jungle skirmishes smoother too. For example, against Nocturne, if I max Q first, I'd run at him, stun him, but he'd likely block it with his spell shield or just absorb it. He'd gain extra attack speed, fear me, and I'd end up just eating tons of damage while feared, unable to retaliate. By maxing W, I can play a bit sneakier. Most enemies don't expect how much damage you'll deal in extended trades. This brings us to the next important point. What should you build after Frozen Heart? If you're fed, I suggest going for Trinity Force as your second item. It's excellent on Volibear, giving him everything he needs: attack speed, damage, health, and utility. However, if you're not entirely sure how the game is progressing, I recommend a different approach, alternating between a cheap item and an expensive one. Here's the sequence: Frozen Heart, then Warmog's Armor, then Abyssal Mask. And you might be wondering, what's this build about? It's all about absorbing damage while still remaining effective. Believe it or not, with this build, I play much better in the mid to late game. The only issue is that your jungle clear becomes a bit slow, so I'm currently still thinking about the rest of the build for something more offensive. I'm still experimenting with which item works best in this spot. But once you finish Abyssal Mask, your whole view of the game changes. You'll start feeling like the old Volibear, unkillable, while still dealing decent damage. As the game progresses, the enemy team begins to feel demoralized because they simply can't deal with you anymore. The beauty of this build is that it's effective against both AP and AD heavy compositions. You can tank, deal damage, and still be a massive threat in team fights. This game was what opened my eyes to rushing Frozen Heart as the first item. We were playing against an AP Twitch, and although he dealt significant damage, I didn't feel threatened by him until the late game. To give you a better understanding of how this build performs, let me break down the second game. In this match, things were relatively even, but I think the enemy team got tilted after some unfortunate plays and solo deaths. This time we faced Viego. Believe it or not, Volibear versus Viego in the jungle is a decent matchup. Based on my experience, when people pick Viego, it's either because they're comfortable with him or they just don't know what else to play. Now, since we're rushing Frozen Heart, there's a hidden issue with maxing W first, and that's scaling. To address this, I went with a unique approach. Grasp of the Undying in the jungle, combined with Ghost. This is my go-to setup these days, along with Demolish, and I sometimes swap Ghost with Teleport. The idea is to bring back my old Volibear jungle playstyle with Teleport, stacking health smartly throughout the game. Here's the logic. Let's say you get fed and you build Frozen Heart as your first item, followed by Warmog's Armor. You'll still be short of about 200 health to trigger Warmog's passive, which restores health and grants bonus movement speed if you haven't taken damage in the last 5 seconds. That's where Grasp of the Undying comes in handy. It allows you to stack extra health through trades, combined with the Overgrowth rune and 1 or 2 rounds of scaling health items. By the time you reach level 11 and have 2 completed items, you'll be stacked with health and armor, setting yourself up for a stronger mid-game. Now, let's talk about damage absorption. The reason we build resistances is to increase the effectiveness of the health you've stacked on your champion. For example, if you have 1000 health and 100 armor, it effectively doubles your health in physical fights. On the flip side, if you only have 2000 health with 0 resistances, it's like having 1000 GP and 100 armor and magic resist. Old school Volibear was all about stacking health and scaling into a tanky damage dealer. Your W scales with HP, making you tanky while still outputting significant damage. This is why champions like Vayne used to counter Volibear, as she could shred through tanks. Now with this build, it's not just about surviving, but thriving in extended trades. After explaining the setup and mindset, the rest of the game comes down to decision-making. You need to focus on trades and ganks that keep you alive and help you reach your power spike quicker. For example, in this game I decided to camp Shen. Shen players tend to play safe, farm up, and wait for key objectives like Drake or Herald to use their ultimate. So if you can build an early lead in the bot lane, you'll get about 3 successful ganks before Shen hits level 6. After that, it becomes harder to gank the enemy bot side since he'll use his ultimate to counter gank or assist his team. But if you camp Shen, he can't ult himself. This throws the enemy team off balance and allows your team to play safely in the other lanes. Shen is a melee champion, making it easier to stack Grasp of the Undying, and as the game drags on, he gets more demoralized. He's stuck in lane, getting camped, while your team plays passively across the map. As you can see, with this supreme push, we almost closed out the game. After that, the enemy team fell apart. They started flaming each other in all chat, and just 2 minutes later, they surrendered. And with that, my dear viewers, our time together has come to an end. Don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. We've only got about 25 days left before the season ends, so I'll be grinding hard to reach Master. Wish me luck. Thank you as always for your support. Until next time, take care everyone and peace.